There's a distinct difference between the Army and the Army National Guard. So if you're trying to choose which component that you want to join of the Army, this video should help you make a better educated determination. The difference between the Army and the Army National Guard is the Army is a full-time organization. When you enlist into the Army, you are committing the next 3 to 6 years full-time as a soldier in the Army. The Army is on a federal mission. If you enlist into the National Guard, you're enlisting into a part-time obligation, which equals out to about 40 days of year that you will serve in the National Guard. The mission of the National Guard is a dual mission to protect both the state and the federal government. Now, let's say that you're in the regular Army and you determine that the lifestyle that you're living isn't exactly for you. You are not going to be able to go to your leadership and ask them to change your position to a part-time position. That's just not how it works. When you enlist into the Army, you sign a contract saying that you are going to put on that uniform and those boots every single day for X amount of time. Now, in the National Guard, you're going to work 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year. Again, it equals somewhere about 40 days out of the year. If you don't like the National Guard or what you're doing in the National Guard, you're only obligated to 40 days out of the year. Whereas if you're in the Army and you're not like what you're doing, you're working every day in the Army. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, I want to change to the National Guard. It just doesn't happen. It can't happen. You've already signed that contract. Now let's say that you're in the National Guard and you're loving what you do in the National Guard, but you feel like you want to do it more. You want to be a full-time soldier. Well, the National Guard has active Guard Reserve or AGR positions available. We also have technician positions, and occasionally we have funding for ADOS, Active Duty Operational Support, or ADSW, Active Duty Special Work Orders, where we can put a soldier on orders for X amount of time when the mission is critical and we need to get it accomplished and we don't have the manpower that we need. Before you can start applying for full-time positions in the National Guard, you must complete basic training and advanced training. Full-time National Guard positions receive the same pay and the same benefits as the regular Army does. If you're working as a full-time soldier in the National Guard and you have a family situation come up or some big event that comes up and you're not able to work full-time anymore, you're able to bring that to your leadership, and most likely they're going to amend your orders and put you back on a drilling status or M-Day status where you're only drilling 1 weekend out of the month. So based off this information alone, the National Guard is more flexible in what you can and can't do in it, whereas the Army, again, is going to be a full-time position. Okay, moving forward. So when you're going through basic training and advanced training in the Army, you're going to get to complete a wish list of duty locations that you would like to be at or be stationed at. I feel like they give you this wish list to make you feel like you have a say in where you're going to go. However, when I did my wish list, I didn't get any of the places that I selected, and I didn't choose locations where most people selected. So in the Army, you'll get to do your wish list, and then towards the end of advanced training, you're going to find out where your duty station is. The Army is going to send you wherever the needs of the Army are at that time. How it works in the National Guard. Before you go to basic training, you are going to select your job and you're going to select your duty location. In the National Guard, after basic and advanced training, you will then return to your home unit, the location in which you selected prior to enlisting into the National Guard. For those of you who didn't know, when I first enlisted, I enlisted with the regular Army. After that, I joined the reserves, and now I'm currently in the National Guard. I've been in all three components of the Army, and I'm in the National Guard for a reason. I've chosen to be in the National Guard. I could be in the Army right now if I chose to be, or I could be in the Army Reserves. But after spending time in each component, I've come to realize that the National Guard is more flexible and is more family oriented, and there's just more opportunities in general. This is why I'm in the National Guard. Again, if there was another branch that did more for me, then I would be in that other branch. So when I joined the Army, I enlisted as an infantryman. I really didn't know what I was enlisting as, but I had to select my position at MEPS. Now, is that how it is now? I'm not 100% certain if you select your position before you go to MEPS or not. However, after basic and advanced training, I was stationed at Fort Stewart. About midway through my first MOS, I wanted to change my MOS. But that is just not something that you can really do in the Army until after your contract is over. After you complete your initial contract, then you may be able to switch your MOS. But during that initial contract, or the contract that you're going through with the MOS that you enlisted as, most likely you're not going to be able to change your MOS. Since I've been in the National Guard, I've got 4 additional MOSs. So how did I get these additional MOSs? Basically, I let my leadership know that I was interested in changing my MOS, and if a position came available or a vacancy became available, I would be interested in going to an MOS school and completing that MOS training so that I could be qualified in that additional MOS and fill that vacancy. Now, it's not always going to work like that regardless of the branch that you're in. But if you go to your leadership, you let them know that you're interested in switching your MOS and you have a good reason why you want to switch your MOS, then it's going to get taken in consideration and it may just happen for you. Does the Army or the Army National Guard get more benefits? That's a good question. I would say that the Army, in some ways, receives more benefits than the National Guard, and in other ways the National Guard receives more benefits. Now, the National Guard is funded through the state and through the federal government, so therefore we receive benefits from the state and the federal government. The Army does not receive state benefits because they're part of a federal organization on a federal mission. Now, the Army and the Army National Guard both offer sign-on bonuses. I know for the Army National Guard, sign-on bonuses are between $5,000 and $20,000. The National Guard and the Army both have tuition assistance. They both have the GI Bill. They both have the GI Bill kicker, and they both have student loan repayment. In the Army, you are going to receive full medical insurance. In the National Guard, when you go to basic training and advanced training, you're going to have medical insurance as well. Now, when you come back and you're on drilling status, you're going to have insurance as well, but money is going to be taken out of your check to pay for that insurance. If you're full-time National Guard, then no money is going to be taken out of your check for insurance. Now, both the Army and the Army National Guard are going to give you life insurance. You're going to get veterans preference on your civilian job application from both branches, and both will make you eligible for the VA home loan. Now, let's talk about college. You're going to receive college incentives from both the Army and the Army National Guard. However, in the Army, it's going to be more difficult for you to attend college because of your training schedule. When I was in the Army, I tried to go to college for 3 years, but because of our training schedule and deployments and field exercises, it was basically impossible for me to go to school. I did feel like my leadership wanted to give me the opportunity to go to school. However, it was just impossible due to the training schedule. Now, in the National Guard, you drill 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the year. This allows you a sufficient amount of time to go to college and get your degree. Now, if college and the National Guard collide on the same dates, you can request leave through your leadership to miss drill to attend your college function. All 3 components of the Army go to basic training together. So the Army Reserves, and the National Guard, we all go to the same training sites for basic combat training and advanced individual training. Now, in the National Guard, if you're already MOS qualified in one MOS and you're looking to switch your MOS to a new MOS, you have the option of going to the active duty school to complete that MOS, or going through an accelerated course that is paid for by the National Guard and is instructed by the National Guard. In obtaining all my additional MOSs, I decided to go to the active duty schools because they're longer and they gave me a longer opportunity to learn what I needed to in that MOS. You know, I'm kind of slow sometimes, so. Now, of course, I sound biased because I'm an Army National Guard recruiter. However, I am trying to give you my honest opinion based off of my experience in the Army and the Army National Guard. I spent 3 years in the regular Army, and I know what that lifestyle is like. And by no means am I trying to belittle the Army. It was a great part of my life. If you have any questions about the 3 components of the Army, write those in the comments below. I appreciate the support that I've been getting on this channel. It really does mean a lot to me. Again, I'm trying to help out the future of this country and reach a larger audience, so I thought YouTube would be a good way for me to make that happen. Thank you guys very much for supporting me.